Visualizing change over time. Well, it doesn't sound like a super complicated topic, and to be honest, it's not. But still, depending on what you exactly want to show, what you need, there are different ways to do it. And in this video, I want to show 4 solutions. Yeah, let's get into it. If you open the Power BI file, you can see 2 table visuals, sales 2022 and 21, sales data, the most interesting data. In the first solution, our focus is to show only the most important numbers as quickly as possible, which could be in this case like showing the actual sales for 2022 and then how does it compare to 2021. Did it increase or decrease, and by how much? Let's create a new page, and we can use cards for this. Let's add the card visual, and we are going to go to fact sales and pull in the sales measure. This is just really sum of sales value. And we can also add a slicer with the dimension, date, year. Let's go to formatting the slicer, slicer setting, option, style, drop down. We are going to select 2022. Going back to the card, we can resize it, go to the callout value in the visualizations pane. Let's change the color to dark gray instead of black. Add 2 decimal values and remove the category label. We can make it even a bit larger, like this. And then go to General, add the title. And this is going to be Sales 2022. But if you want to do it dynamically, depending on the selection, the filter selection, I already created a measure for a dynamic title. So open conditional formatting, field value, fact sales. And this is the sales title. Click OK. And what it does, like just write sales and then always the selected year, simply. You can change the color to less saturated gray and also add the subtitle versus last year. Let's change the color even less saturated than the main title. And then we can also go to effect and just remove the background. Now what's missing is the versus last year part. So we are going to copy this card. And instead of fields, we can put this sales difference text. Let's make it a bit smaller. Callout value is going to be 20. And yeah, so what it does is calculating the absolute value, but also the percentage value, and also adding these plus icons in front of it. If you open the sales versus last year text, in the variable, it calculates the sales versus last year. And if this value is larger than 0, then it adds a plus sign in front of it, and then it formats the value into millions. Otherwise, it just returns the simple formatted value. For the percentage, it does the same. Okay, let's get back to the formatting. It would be cool to indicate whether this is a good or a bad value for us. We can do it with colors. If this value is good, like an increase in sales in good for us, so that's green. If it's bad, then it's red. So I created already a measure for it. Let's go to visual, callout value and conditional formatting. Select field value, go to fact sales and dynamic color sales difference. Click OK. So what it does, dynamic color sales difference, depending on the sales versus last year value, it returns red, green or gray. In this case, this is positive, so it returns green. Then we can go to general. First of all, we don't need the title. And then we can also change the background. We can change it with the same conditional formatting, field value, effect sales, dynamic color sales difference, click OK. And just let's make it more transparent, 85%. This looks better, but I would say it's still a bit too large. So I go back to the callout value, make it smaller, and then general effects. I'm going to add the visual border, make it white, and let's round the corners. Make it 7 pixels and make it narrower and smaller. Yeah, like this. As a final touch, we can frame it. Go to Insert and add the shape. Rounded rectangle. Go to Style. Change the color to white. Change the border color to the lightest gray. 1 pixel is fine. And we can also add the shadow. Let's make the shadow a bit less prominent. Make it lighter. Now we can frame it properly. Go to the view, selection pane, and drag it to the bottom. You can select everything, then go to format, align, and we can center align it. And what I would still do is to make the shape less rounded. Go to shape, rounded corners, 15%. This is one way to do it, but we could also add text as a context. So instead of writing just the numbers, we could also give some more information, like this is a good thing that's happening, or is it a bad thing that's happening? Let's create a text box and type the following: total sales in 2022, but we can add the value dynamically. Click on value and type year. Year for text is the name of the measure here on the bottom. It dynamically selects the maximum year depending on what's selected in the filter, which is in this case 2022. Click save. Amount to, and here we can add the sales value. Sales selected. But you can see in the result that it's going to be displayed without the millions, but we want it with the millions. There is no way to format it here. Instead of that, we can use a measure, sales in million, which is already formatted in millions. Click on save. Record high. Great. And then compared to the previous year, it is an increase of, and then we can add our difference here, the change, which was sales difference text. You can select it. This is what we want. Click save and then add the dot at the end. Then we can format it a little bit. First of all, I would change the font style to Verdana. It somehow gives a better spacing in my opinion. And depending on how you create your dashboard, like the font style should be unified. So it's not a good idea to use all kind of different font styles. Then we can emphasize the parts which we need. Okay, total sales. 2022, and after that can also turn this one in bold, and I'm also going to make the value larger, 20 pixel, and compared to the previous year is bold, increases bold, and then selecting this value can make it 12 pixels. Make the text a bit larger. Then I select everything and desaturate the color to this, like this. And I put the N already in the next row. So this is the same information, but with a little bit of context. We can also add like a header title, really emphasizing that yeah, we are happy about it. We are doing great. So we are rocking it. Let's change the text to white. And also Verdana, 20 pixel. And also we are going to change the background effects and make it gray. What if you make it a bit smaller, 18? I guess this works too, but let's center align it. So this is already like kind of some storytelling. So it's not just a plain text, and interpret however you want to interpret it. Although the color is already a little bit telling, but in this case, it's actually written out. So this is the first solution, that just showing the most important numbers. But what if we want to show more? What if we want to show the trend over time and comparing this trend to the trend in the previous year? What could we use for it? You guessed it well, a line chart. That's the best way to show trend over time. Let's create a new page. This was card, and we can copy actually this one. I'm going to select it and I'm going to group it pressing Ctrl G. Then also select the year slicer and then copy it to page 2. Can sync them. And here, let's insert a line chart. Add to the line chart the dimension, date, month, short on the x-axis. Then add the sales measure and the sales last year measure. I'm going to format it. Let's go to format visual. Going to the x-axis. First of all, remove the title. Then y-axis, also remove the title. We can also change the font style. We can make it the text a bit smaller. And instead of making the font size smaller, we can change the font to DIN for both the y-axis and the x-axis. So coming here, DIN, you see already like shrink a little bit. Then let's move to secondary axis. We don't need that. Legend. We can use markers, which are lines. I like it this time because these are also lines and these are also lines. Now let's go to text. The text color is fine. Then going to grid lines, horizontal, we can remove it. And then finally to the lines. The sales last year is selected, that's fine. Then let's make the stroke width to 1 pixel and change the color to this medium gray. Then select the sales in the series. It's going to be 2 pixels, so a bit wider or thicker, and also darker. We can increase the size a little bit so we see the entire visual. And as a final touch, we can go to the title. We can call it sales over time. Change the text color to less saturated gray. And then we can also change in the legend these sales and sales last year. You have to come back to build visual. We can rename them to current year and last year. So this is showing the sales over time, like nothing special about it. We can combine it also with our card, like having a larger, so to say, card. Go to the shape, I reduce the rounding to 7 and just place it a bit better. I'm also going to remove the background from this visual. Just going to general effects, remove background. Yeah, it looks good. And let's say we want to focus on the individual months. So maybe we can see how it would look like with the column chart. I'm gonna select this, everything. In fact, after these two are selected, I just right click on this group and merge it into the group. Then I'm going to copy this and let's change this to a column chart. And in a column chart, it actually makes it easier to compare the current year and the last year in the individual months. It's also maybe easier to compare the current years with each other or the last years with each other, the lines. But you kind of lose the trend, you kind of lose this flow feeling because the different colors, the different columns like break this continuity. So for the trend, the line chart is better in my opinion. And for comparing the values here, well, maybe we can make something better out of it. Let's try this combination chart and pull the last year to the line axis. One thing which I noticed earlier before is that for some reason the legend is getting messed up. So this is blue, but the legend is still dark gray. To fix that, we have to go back to the column chart and actually change the colors here. So I'm going to change the current year color to light purple, maybe a bit darker, second. And then go back to format visual, again the combination chart. Now they are still not matching up, but now if you go to the columns, we can change it also to this purple, and now they are matching. With the line chart it works for some reason, so when I change the color here, last year, just change it to the dark blue, both of them has been changed. I reduced the stroke width to 2. And this is actually a very nice way. So even the current year has a better fluidity or better flow. And you can compare it to the last year, which is a line. What's a bit hard though is, for example, looking in March, like where do you compare these two values? Well, you should have to look in the middle and like comparing the middle point of the line to this horizontal. And that's not very easy, but what we can do is to change the line type here. Instead of linear, we can select step. And now instead of comparing some dot on the line to the column height, we can compare these two horizontal values with each other. That works much better in my opinion. So far we covered in the first solution how to show just the numbers we need. Then in the second solution, how to show the values over time, trend over time. And in the first solution, we want to include the values for the individual regions. If you go back to the data page, you see we have these 4 regions, east, north, south, west. And we want to compare the change over time among these regions. We can duplicate page 2, duplicate it. I'm going to call it trend. And the second is going to be subcomponents. Let's see what happens if we put here some subcomponents. We could go to this dimension region and pull the region to the legend. But we cannot do it because on the y-axis we have 2 values. If we want to use something on the legend, we are allowed to have only 1 value on the y-axis. Remove last year. And now we can move the region to the legend. I'm going to change the colors here. Colors. I'm also going to reduce the stroke width to the minimum. And yeah, you can see that, but this is just the trend over time. We cannot really compare it to last year. For example, if I would copy this one, and then I put here, instead of current year, I put the sales last year on the y-axis. It is going to be so confusing, so much information. Like you really cannot get out anything of it. So I'm just gonna remove this. So what we could do is, first of all, adding another visual to it. I'm going to make the shape larger. And then I'm just going to select the sales over time, make it a bit smaller, and copy it. And one of them is going to be like before the regional sales, and this one is going to be our total sales. And here we can add the sales last year again. Let's call it last year. This one is going to be sales by region, so we change the title. regional sales trend. And let's call it total sales trend. We can also change the line color. Last year is going to be medium gray. And now if we take advantage of the interactivity, then we can also select individual regions here. And then we can see the comparison against the last year. And we can also see these changes and the total sales for this selected region. And we can also compare the 4 regions with each other, like how the trend developed. What if we go to the bar chart? In this case, we can add directly the region in the legend. Let's add it to the column legend. And let's change it to this stacked bar chart or stack combination chart. Changing the colors again. And yeah, so this kind of looks cool, but it's not very strong in my opinion, because you can kind of see the trend, but only from the bottom color, from the bottom region. And you cannot really see the trend anymore from the other regions. You can see the trend of the total. You can also compare the total to the previous year, but we cannot compare the subcomponents to the previous year. So yeah, if we select here the regions, we can see the values to it, but this is like not really, the highlight doesn't really tell us anything about it. So I want to show a third option for this. I'm going to move it a bit to the side. And a better way to show the change over time across different subcategories or subcomponents is with a slope graph. So let's copy this one and move it to the side. And here, let's turn it back to a line chart. I'm going to remove the secondary y-axis. And in the x-axis, we can add the year. Move the year to the x-axis. And finally, we can add the region to the legend. And now we have these 4 regions, but only for the values of 2022. Reason is because this filter is filtering the visual. We could turn off the interaction, but then it shows also the values for 2020. And what we want to show, the change from the previous year. So we can enable the filtering again. And to make sure that the filtering is correct, I created a second team date table, team date 2, which is a disconnected table. If you go back to the model view, you can see that there are no connections. Let's go back to the report view. And I'm going to add the year from this second date table. So first of all, it's not filtered anymore by the year, but we still want the year filtering the values. And actually, I created another measure for it, which would be this sales last 2 years. What it does, it looks at the maximum of the date 2 year. For example, in this point is 2022, in this point is 21, here is 20. And if it equals the max date from the original table, which is 2022 or whatever is filtered, then it returns the sales value. An alternative is that this max date year, these values, equals the filtered value 2022 minus 1, which is 2021. In that case, it returns the last year's sales. And I didn't give alternative result in the switch function, which results in a default blank value. Let's see what happens if we put this one on the y-axis. Well, okay, now we see 2021 and 22 only, but it still looks a bit weird. This is because our line is still in this step line type. But if you click on linear, you can actually see these values. And to finish up the slope graph, we can add this ending and starting points to it. And that's, I think, a very cool way to show how did they change. Like you can even see, like, you 2021 West had less sales than South, but it has changed by 2022. You can also go to the grid lines and remove these vertical grid lines. And in the last solution, we want to see everything. So we want to see every detail for the subcomponents. So let's copy this one. Create a new page. Paste it here. And go back to the subcomponents and make sure that you also copy the filter. You can sync it. And just move the group to this side. How we can show the details and a lot of information? Well, charts would be overcrowded, so actually a table would be a better option. I'm going to create a table, put the regions there. Also, let's say we can put the sales last year. Then let's put this sales last year, sales difference text. And this is enough for now. We can format it a little bit, go to style presets, click on none. Then the values, we can change it to dark gray. Also going to the column headers, already dark gray. That's okay. Going to the totals, change it also to dark gray. And then let's go to specific column. Region is fine this way. Go to sales, display units in millions, 2 decimal values, and then go to sales last year, do the same, millions, 2 decimal values. And we can also format here the change over time, depending on whether it's positive or negative. So for the font color, we can add the field value. Cancel. Make sure that the sales different text is selected in the series. Change the font color here. Field value, fact table sales, and dynamic color sales difference. We can also change the background color. In this case, we cannot change the transparency. So instead of that, we can use a different measure with lighter colors. The format style should be field value, and click OK. This looks nice. What I would want to do is to remove also these grids. So let's go back to the top, open grids, horizontal grids, remove them, and we can actually add some spacing or row padding. Go to options, add a little bit of row padding. We can make the font size a bit smaller, 9 or 8. I think 9 is fine. And what I would want to have is to have a little bit of gap between these conditional formattings. Well, we cannot do it with the row padding, but we can do it with the horizontal grid lines. And let's turn it into white, make it a bit larger. 5 seems okay. Yeah, the totals are not conditionally formatted. I didn't find a way to do that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe with a different measure, but I think it's not really possible yet. And for example, we could also add some extra information, like for example, the trends, how the sales trend has developed. To do that, we can go back to build your visual and right click on the sales. And we can actually add the sparkline here. Yeah, for the sales, and the x-axis should be from the dimension date, the date. Click on create, and we can drag it behind the sales. Awesome, right? So we don't have to write an SVG. Probably you knew it already. I actually just discovered it like last week. Although it's less flexible, so if you go to the formatting and sparklines, there are not many things you can do. Like you can change it to column. That's cool too. And you can change the color. Change it to something like this. Make it also a bit darker. Yeah, but pretty much that's it. So if you want to have some more effects on it, then you should create an SVG. Okay, we can also add markers to it. That's also something we can add. That's also cool. Okay, so we don't need the markers. And We can add also maybe here some visualizations. I would go and add another spark line based on sales difference text. But here, instead of that, because this is a text value, let's select simply the sales versus last year. Sales versus last year. The x-axis is going to be our date from the date table. Let's create. Can make it a bit larger. And this time, this is going to be sales versus last year by date. This is going to be a column chart or column spark lines. And also make it dark gray. And here also with an SVG file, you could conditionally format it. For example, highlighting the months which performed worse than in the previous year. But this is what we got now. And as a final formatting, we could just change a little bit the titles. For example, we don't need this one here. Let's resize it again. And the same goes here. I'm going to call this last year. And this is going to be the change versus last year. Let's make this one also larger again. Okay, as a final act, I'm also going to remove these borders here. It's kind of annoying. So I just select one of the borders and remove it, and it removes everything. And what I would think would be like a complete visual is maybe like putting it like this. I'm going to extend the size of it. Here we can remove the background actually on the table. Also make it smaller. I'm gonna move it to the side and I go back to the trend. And actually, let's copy this line chart here. You can insert it here, and yeah, this is our sales 2022. You can format it a little bit. So this is it. Everything combined, showing a lot of information, showing the change over time in very different ways. I think these are really cool solutions, also quite simple. They do what they are supposed to do. If you have any other ideas, you could put it in the comments, or if you have any other feedback, you could also put it in the comments. Yeah, so see you next time.